Inside Borne Manor, Alice paced barefoot across the cool flagstones of the square entrance hall. She'd fallen for the house as soon as she'd first set foot on those flagstones, picturing the grand stone fireplace alive with flames in winter and a cheery jug of flowers on the central table in springtime. The sound of car doors slamming had her heart bumping around behind her ribs. The new tenant must have arrived. Her heart didn't know whether to soar or sink. One of the benefits of being with Brad had been access to decent legal advice, and this had served her well over the last couple of weeks when she decided to rent the house out. Brad hadn't been bothered. As long as he didn't have to cover the mortgage payments, he was fine with whatever Alice wanted to do where the manor was concerned. Or so the message came back from the solicitor, who'd also been responsible for making the switch from mortgage payer to landlady a relatively easy one. Alice herself hadn't needed to be involved in the legal ins and outs, so she'd spent her days clearing out her personal effects in order to prepare the house for its new inhabitants. It had all happened with quite indecent speed once the ball was rolling, from on the market to 6-month rentals secured within a few days of being on the agent's books. It was mildly surprising that the new people hadn't even bothered to come and view the house before signing on the dotted line, but Alice was just relieved to know that she was still the legal owner of Borne Manor, even if she didn't get the joy of living in it, for the next few months at least. 3 raps on the door knocker. It was time to meet the lucky new people who'd get to call the manor home, and then it would be time for Alice to move into her own new home too. She took a deep, calming breath, arranged her smile, and then reached out for the door handle. Robinson watched the taxi disappear off down the drive and then knocked the huge blacked door knocker 3 times and waited. It struck him as weird that the homeowners had insisted on meeting him here themselves rather than arranging for a key to be waiting. In truth, he'd have preferred to skip the tea, biscuits, and guided tour, but then he was in England now, the homeland of, well, tea, biscuits, and guided tours, so he steeled himself to suck it up and get rid of them as soon as he possibly could. Setting his Goldilocks fantasy aside, he laid himself a private bet that the door would be opened by an elderly guy in tweed, or his equally elderly wife in a woolen twin set and pearls. Or a butler, maybe? He'd seen enough movies about big English houses. There was an outside possibility of staff in a place like this. Maybe living here for a while wouldn't be so bad if there was someone around to help keep the fridge stocked with beer. Maybe he'd get really lucky and land up with a guy who liked to shoot pool, too. Robinson's daydream came to a halt as he heard the catch on the inside of the door move, and a second or so later, it swung wide. Well, hell! Maybe there was something to those fairy stories after all, because it seemed that he'd been right first time around. This house was straight out of the pages of a beautifully illustrated children's book, and even odder still, it appeared very much as if Goldilocks actually did live here. Okay, so maybe she'd switched the pinafore dress for ripped jeans and a sweater that slid off one shoulder, but her hair was bang on the money. Golden ripples that fell past her elbows, and nervous, startling blue eyes that looked into his as her lips curved into a slow, uncertain smile. "Mr. Duff? I'm Alice McBride." She stuck her hand out, and Robinson dropped his bags onto the wide stone step so he could take it. Glancing over her shoulder to make sure the 3 bears weren't anywhere in sight behind her, he slid his hand into hers. She glanced over his too, and then managed to frown and keep that fixed little smile in place all at the same time. She had a surprisingly strong handshake for a girl who appeared so delicate on first glance. Come in," she said, letting go of his fingers at last and stepping aside to allow him entry into the hall. More fairy tale stuff. The hallway was big enough to count as a room in its own right, and the fire crackling in the hearth took the chill from the air. His hostess glanced around outside in the empty driveway for a moment, and then banged the front door shut and turned to him. "Will the rest of your family be joining you later?"